So here are my cards for this speech. Hi, so I am Bethany Williams, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the Underground Railroad. Did you know that conductors with the Underground Railroad assisted 100,000 slaves obtain freedom? Now, the Underground Railroad is not actually a railroad. It's actually a network of routes, places, and people that helped the enslaved get to freedom from the south to the north. So in the 19th century, kidnapped Africans and descendants were forced into labor and forced to work in fields in the South primarily. According to Sarah Ann McGill, with her book, The Underground Railroad, slave trade actually began in the 1440s. The Europeans traveled to Africa to buy the slaves, and they bought them from African tribes along the coastline. These slaves were then transported on a journey to America, which was also known as the Middle Passage. The majority of the slaves were sold to the South for assistance on the plantation to assist the plantation owners due to the cotton production boom. The slaves were forced to work in extreme heat, work long hours, and were even whipped to keep them in line. A group of Quakers, ex-slaves, and freedmen decided that they were going to help. The slaves would travel along the routes in the Underground Railroad and would actually have to stay off of the roads or populated areas because there were slave hunters that were out to recapture them. The slaves would travel and wander through thick wild forests at night. They actually would know that they were going the correct way. On a clear night, they would follow the North Star, and on cloudy nights, they would follow based on where the moss was growing, because the moss actually grows on the north side of the tree. The actual organization of the Underground Railroad began in 1804. It began and developed by the Revolutionary War General Thomas Boards. He developed the first route. In 1831, they officially named it the Underground Railroad as the routes. Along the way, there were conductors that assisted, and they weren't actually conductors because this wasn't an actual railroad. They were actually abolitionists that were providing food, shelter, and direction to the slaves. The conductors would allow these slaves to hide in their attics, their haylofts, their secret passages, and the slaves would rest and eat without fear of capture during the day, and then they would begin their traveling again at night, trying to get from the south to the north. The president of the Underground Railroad was named Levi Coffin. Levi Coffin grew up in North Carolina, and he had witnessed a lot of the suffering that was endured by the enslaved people. He was actually taught by his father that you shouldn't allow it. Coffin ended up moving to Newport, Indiana with his wife, Catherine. And together they had a home that ended up helping so many slaves obtain freedom that they ended up calling it the Grand Central Station, their home. According to the Underground Railroad, Navigate the Journey from Slavery to Freedom by Judy Dodge Cummings, Levi Coffin and other Quakers assisted a man named John Dimery. Now, John Dimery was actually the first runaway who used the Underground Railroad in North Carolina. He was at least the first runaway on record, too. Now, by far, I think the most known about to assist was Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was an ex-slave who traveled to the South and would lead slaves to freedom. Tubman actually helped 300 slaves and kept her efforts going until the Civil War ended. The Underground Railroad was no longer needed after the Civil War ended and the Union victory was established and slavery was officially abolished. So I appreciate you listening to my speech, and I hope you learned a lot. Thank you.